Pamela, the two main reasons why President Trump says that he likes tariffs is that he wants to shrink trade deficits, but also bring manufacturing back to the United States. So we set out to answer that question. Has that actually happened? How many companies have moved 100% of their manufacturing to the United States since President Trump took office? Well, the answer, pretty clear, zero.
Higher the tariff, the more likely it is to have them come into the country.
The higher the tariff, the more you're going to put on the value of that piece, those goods, the higher people are going to have to pay in shops.
Ready? The higher the tariff, the more likely it is that the company will come into the United States and build a factory in the United States so it doesn't have to pay the tariff.
That will take many, as you know, that will take many years.
In fact, I'll tell you, there's another theory is that the tariff, you make it so high, so horrible, so obnoxious that they'll come right away. When I do the 10%, 10% is really, first of all, 10% when you collect it is hundreds of billions of dollars. The numbers that you're talking, all reducing our deficit. But really, so there's two ways of looking at a tariff. You can do it as a money-making instrument, or you can do it as something to get the companies. Now, if you want the companies to come in, the tariff has to be a lot higher than 10%, because 10% is not enough. Guys, they're not going to do it for 10. But you make a 50% tariff, they're going to come in.
So this just in, automaker Ford's profits have been entirely wiped out by tariffs. Ford just reported a net loss of $29 million last quarter, compared with $1.8 billion in net income just 1 year ago, after they were hit by more than $800 million from Trump's tariffs. This is despite the fact that Ford manufactures most of its vehicles in the United States, because the company relies on parts imported from outside of the country. Plus, they were also hit hard by the new Trump taxes on steel and aluminum. The company said that tariffs are expected to cut about $2 billion from its annual earnings. Executives say that they are pressing the Trump administration to lower taxes on parts and materials that they need to survive.
Well. What a shocker. To catch you up, John Deere, literally an archetype and a symbol of the American agriculture and farming industry, they just announced that they are going to do mass layoffs because they just reported a $300 million quarterly loss because of the tariffs. But I thought that the countries who were sending us the products paid for the tariffs. Now, if this is shocking news to you, you might be sitting there being like, wait, I don't understand, because John Deere is an American company, and that means that they have to make all of their products in the United States, right? First off, John Deere actually produces a lot of their product in Mexico. Now, they do make some products in the United States, which is where they are doing a lot of their layoffs, but what they don't have is they don't have the materials, the parts, the machinery. They have to import all of that, because you see made in America, and what that actually means is assembled in America. And if you don't believe me, literally the director of investor relations came out and said, because of rising costs of steel and aluminum tariffs coming from Europe and India, we have to raise our prices. And then on the other end, which is the buyer of their product, which is mostly farmers, they are nervous about the tariffs, so they've stopped buying new equipment. But you guys think that consumer confidence is so high and optimistic. It's almost like we could have predicted that this was going to happen. It's almost like some of us last year and earlier this year and 2 weeks ago and 5 minutes ago knew how tariffs worked. We tried to explain it to you, and you refused to actually do research yourself. But no. You decided to trust a Truth Social post from President He's in the Files, Why Won't He Release Them? Where he went on and on about the fact that the other countries pay the tariffs. The other countries don't pay the tariffs. And you might be watching this being like, wow, you're normally very calm. You seem very excited about this. Because this, out of all of the things that have been happening in this country, this is the simplest to understand, and it is the hardest to cram into 78 million American voters.
So U.S. manufacturing jobs here in the United States are on a rapid decline. Now, if we do remember, if we'll just go back to this past year of campaign promises, is that manufacturing would be the king again in the United States of America. Well, since we've had a change in the presidency, this year alone, we have netted a loss of almost 30,000 jobs. Over 15,000 jobs were just lost during the months of May and June. There will be more reports for the third quarter, which is showing, once again, a huge drop in the number of people who work in the manufacturing industry. And this is all 100% due to tariffs. The tariffs are making it more expensive for businesses to do business, and what are they doing? They're cutting back their workforce. And that workforce is just normal Americans who are out there trying to make a living. So the promises of a new resurgence of American manufacturing, folks, is just a fantasy. It's not happening, and it doesn't appear it's going to anytime soon.
Say Donald Trump tells it like it is. Literally today, he said inflation cooling right where we want it, and we got the U.S. wholesale inflation number, which is the highest that it's been in 3 years. Fresh and dry veggies up 39%, beef up 80%, toys, appliances, shoes, things that we all need. 44% of people are saying now that they are going to have to go into debt to get their kids back to school.
President Trump promised tariffs would bring factories back to America. But guess what? Zero manufacturing has returned. And instead, businesses are shutting their doors. From an outsider's point of view, it looks like the US just slammed itself with its own trade war. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Now, I don't live in the US, but as an outsider watching all of this unfold, I just have to say this whole tariff thing looks like a giant backfire. Trump said he was going to bring back American jobs, rebuild US factories, and make America the world's manufacturing hub again. But so far, the only thing that has been manufactured is disappointment.
Vote for Trump, and you will see a mass exodus of manufacturing jobs from Mexico to Michigan, from Shanghai to Sterling Heights, and from Beijing to Detroit. Finally, Detroit will benefit. All right?
People, Beth, who are probably saying, well, maybe there's a simple solution. Just make your products in the United States. What is your response to that?
You know, I looked into that today quite a bit. I have space in my property here. I have 10,000 square feet that are it's available for lease. What if I made my own factory? What if I bought the machinery and brought manufacturing here and created more jobs for my fellow Americans? The cost to do that, just for the machines that make my product, is a minimum of $344,000 if I buy those machines from China. But now we've got a tariff, so double that, because I've got to pay the tariff on top of that. If I were to find a factory that already exists here in the US that would be willing to take us on, even though we're a small business and they don't take on people that produce such low quantities as we do, it would take at least 6 to 8 months to get up and running. Because what I have to do first is I have to create a mold for each one of my products. We have 8 products in our product line. Each one of those molds is going to cost us at least $20,000 and take months to build. So if I started tomorrow and we bought the steel, most people don't know the steel goes to China to get machined to become a mold for machinery, even for American factories, because that's where the expertise lies. So if I started that today, in 6 months and about $200,000 later, I might be ready to start production in the US. Well, I'm already now 3 months out of inventory, no revenue, and I don't have that money to start production in the US like this. It's just not possible for me. It's not even physically possible.
Trump's big idea was simple. Slap tariffs on imports so companies have no choice but to build things in America. But here is the problem. Factories didn't come back. Instead, businesses that depended on international trade got crushed, from farmers to small town shop owners. A lot of them have been forced to close down. It's like trying to fix a leaky pipe with duct tape. You might feel clever for a second, but soon your whole house is underwater.
I have a crazy update on the tariffs that I did not see coming. If you aren't caught up, my husband and I own a small business, and we put in an order in early January and got a notification that it was on the way last week from our manufacturer, and we owed 154% tariffs on this order, and we did not find out about that until the day they were on the way. So the order makes its way to the States 2 full weeks ago, and we get a notification from UPS, who was the shipper, saying you owe the government $1,880 before you can receive this package. We can't deliver it until you get that paid. Well, we weren't planning on paying an extra $2,000 for goods that we need, and we can't even sell those goods yet to get the money. We have to have the money in order to get those. So 2 weeks roll around, we're like slowly trying to get together the money, not too stressed about it because we don't need the hats right away. And we get a message 2 weeks to the day from when they got delivered saying, if it's not paid for by today, we have to destroy the goods. So not only are small business owners getting hit with these tariffs, but they only have 2 weeks from the day they hit the country to pay the tariffs, or otherwise the goods have to be destroyed. They cannot be shipped back. They cannot be shipped to you. And as far as we know, there were no payment plan options that you can do. What made this all even more frustrating is that UPS can't speak to the recipient. They can only speak to the sender. And our sender is a manufacturer in China. They're on opposite hours of the US business hours, and they don't know really how to communicate to the UPS person. So we're asking questions to UPS, trying to call, see if we can get a hold of the customs agency, see if we can get a grace period or an extension on when we need to pay it, or if we can do a payment plan or anything, but they will not speak to us because we are not the shipper of the goods, which does not make sense, because if the recipient of the goods is responsible to pay the tariff, then the recipient of the goods should be allowed to talk to you about the order and the goods you have in your care. Anyways, I just feel so bad because I saw a girl on TikTok saying that she had just put in an order for like $30,000 worth of product from China for her business before the tariffs came into action. So I don't know what she would do. She would have 2 weeks to come up with, what would that be? Like nearly $60,000, $55,000 or something. For us, $1,800 is like a lot. We were luckily able to borrow some money to make sure that we got it and those goods didn't get destroyed, but otherwise that would have been literally like $2,000 worth of goods between shipping costs and actual goods price, all lost because the US would have to destroy the goods because we didn't pay the tariff on time. So that's what's happening.
Unlike anything we've ever seen. And yeah, we're all just kind of reeling from it. The whole coffee world kind of just like sat stunned for a minute. And, you know, we're looking to our importers like, what are we going to do? And they're like, we don't know. Price is going to go up all the way down the line from the producer all the way to the drinker. So, I mean, yeah, what was $6 could be 10 very easily.
See, that's exactly what I mean. These tariffs didn't bring jobs back. They made life more expensive for everyone. And it feels like regular Americans are the ones paying the price, not China, not Mexico, not anyone else Trump claimed was losing.
Donald Trump has claimed that tariffs would bring in significant tax revenue, that tax revenue would come from abroad, and that they would repatriate production, particularly in manufacturing, to the United States. That's impossible across the board. First of all, foreigners do not pay the tariffs. Tariffs are import taxes paid by the importer. One can argue that, well, in fact, the exporters pay the tariffs because they lower their prices by the amount of the tariff. That would presume that the U.S. importer is what's called a monopsonist, which a company that has enormous buying power. And if the importer is a monopsonist, you don't need tariffs to beat down prices. In other words, if a monopsonist can say, there's been a 10% tariff, we demand that you lower your price by 10%, they don't need to wait for the tariffs. They would say it now, lower your price by 10% or else. Second, it can either bring in significant revenue or protect U.S. manufacturing. It can't do both. If it brings in significant revenue, it's because we continue to import goods from abroad. That's where the tariff revenue comes from. If it does protect U.S. manufacturing, we don't get revenue from abroad because we stop importing. So it can't do all those things that Donald Trump claims.
I'll tell you this. The world is watching, and it's kind of wild. Countries like China, Vietnam, Canada, and Mexico, they actually gained more business because companies moved production there instead of back to the US. So while Trump promised a manufacturing revival, what actually happened is a manufacturing migration straight out of America and into other countries. Prices are up, jobs down, factories Nowhere to be seen. If this was a business strategy, it would be a case study in failure. Honestly, it looks like the US put itself on sanctions.
Now that corporations have had time to digest the new tariffs, it's becoming clear they're never going to build new factories in the United States. The new tariffs that hit Vietnam are 46%. And that's where Nike builds half of its shoes. And the stock is down, 15% in one day. So Peter Schiff says Nike isn't going to bring production back to the United States. Building factories here would cost more than the 40% tariff. Instead, Nike will raise prices and shift focus to other countries where people can still afford their products. This isn't just going to be Nike. Most global corporations will just follow the money, and that money is beginning to leave the United States in a hurry, because it will make more sense for these corporations to sell their products in markets that will be absorbing the wealth that is leaving the United States because of the new administration's tariffs. Everything in the United States will become harder to find and more expensive. From a new car, to produce at the grocery store, to the Nikes on your feet. This is a shift away from how America has done business for the last 80 years. People are talking about short-term pain. I don't know how pain is short-term when nothing is coming back.
So here we are. Tariffs are still in place. Manufacturing hasn't returned, and businesses are closing. And from where I stand outside the US, it doesn't look like this policy ever had a real plan. It was all about headlines, slogans, and applause lines at rallies. But real economic revival? Nope. So what do you think? Are Trump's tariffs saving America or sinking it further? I'll keep watching, shaking my head in disbelief. Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button, and subscribe if you really want more breakdowns and reactions to what's really happening in the world economy. Until next time, stay sharp. So YouTube thinks you like this video over here. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one. Au revoir.